implement much more projects and programs, and we are a little bit concerned because if we fail to do so with selected sites, how then will we can we achieve the IG targets in general? I was asked to say some words about how to secure better, from our point of view, the results from World Heritage. Our findings meet more or less with your own findings. I think we should use the momentum, the high political interest around the strategic plan of the CBD. We have to invest more, we have to raise funding and allocate the funding and secure the conservation status of the sites. We heard that some sites are underfunded or have problems. We have to meet these problems, address these problems. We should also invest more in the process to enhance the quality of nominations. We heard that some sites are being proposed and they don't gather the necessary conditions to be World Heritage sites. So we should invest in this area. And one of the most important things is that we have to strengthen the role and rights of indigenous and local communities, especially women and youth, and the Go for Biodiv initiative is one of the instruments to do so. On the institutional side, I think we should further strengthen UNESCO's capabilities for natural and mixed heritage aspects, and increase and support, continue to support IUCN's capacity of implementation of the convention. We should as well seek and strengthen the cooperation between the advisory bodies and work on a network and strengthen the network of relevant actors that has been already installed, but I think there's a lot of room to continue to work on this area, to have really an international network that we can rely on. Thank you very much. I'm a little bit tired. Sometimes these international journeys are very tiring, and I hope the next presentation will be a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Harold, and I think we can all empathise with the conference fatigue. But still, there was a lot of insight there into the issues that we're discussing. But the next presentation is actually a group presentation, and because they're not through any fault of theirs, I don't have bios for all of them. I'm going to ask Jessica Brown to introduce them all, but first of all, I'll introduce Jessica. So Jessica is very well known to many of us. She's a long-term member of WCPA, and she's been chairing its Protected Landscape Specialist Group, and very productively so. It's brought out a lot of publications, and she's a magnificent global champion of protected landscapes. And this particular part of WCPA works very closely with the IUCN World Heritage Team on matters related particularly to cultural landscapes. She's the Executive Director of the New England Biolabs Foundation, an independent private foundation whose mission is to foster community-based conservation of landscapes and seascapes and the biocultural diversity of these places, a term which is getting more and more discussion. Over the past 2 years, Jessica has consulted with the UNDP GEF Small Grants Program on its community management programs, community management of protected areas for conservation, or COMPACT initiative, and that's the feature of their presentation today. And Jessica will introduce her team. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny, for that very kind introduction, and thank you, Tim and Guy, for the opportunity to bring out the story of Compact. Am I fairly audible in the back? It's my pleasure to introduce, this is going to be a team presentation. In fact, it's my colleagues who are doing most of the heavy lifting on this presentation. I'll be coming in at the end with some observations and lessons learned, but it's my pleasure to introduce my colleagues who are presenting. That's Terence Haiti from the UNDP GEF Small Grants Program, and Terence is a program advisor for biodiversity with the SGP. He's a cultural anthropologist by training and has worked in countries of sub-Saharan Africa, the Himalaya region, as well as many other regions of the world. And Terence has been involved with Compact since its inception. Nellie Katzum joins us as well. Nellie is Executive Director of the Southern Environmental Association in Belize, a wonderful NGO. It is a partner of Compact, and Nellie is here in that capacity. And incidentally, also, SCA is a grantee of the foundation that I now work with, New England Biolabs Foundation, and they're doing magnificent work with local communities in the Belize Barrier Reef. And Nellie has been serving as focal point for World Heritage as a site manager with the Belize Barrier Reef system. So she's very connected to World Heritage as well as to work at site level. I want to acknowledge and welcome two other Compact colleagues who are with us in the room. They won't be presenting today, but they're available to chat with, and they will be presenting with all of us in sessions on the 11th of September. And that is Bonifacio Tobias. And Bonifacio, perhaps you could raise your hand if you're in the room. He's in the back. Bonifacio is with, he is the local coordinator for Compact with the Puerto Princesa World Heritage Site in the Philippines. Valun Rasora Rimanan, and sorry Valun, I struggle with your last name right here. Valun is the national coordinator for Madagascar, and I recently visited Madagascar and had a chance to see in situ the excellent work that SGP and Compact are doing. And so I just want to mention my own connection to this, having been brought on board 2 years ago to work with Terence as a consultant, and basically with the remit of helping Compact to reflect on its decade of experience. So I'm kind of at a middle distance, and I can say wholeheartedly how impressed I was from the very beginning with the model, and then now having had the opportunity to visit all but 2 of the sites. I have seen the work on the ground, and I think it's just an excellent program. I hope that in the short time that we have, we can share a little of that with you, but again, on the 11th, we'll be doing longer presentations on Compact. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Terence.
Thanks, Jessica. Just preface by saying that you still see that I'm signed up as a World Heritage Center staff member, so once in IUCN something, you remain so for the rest of your life, it seems. Although on my badge it's been changed.
Just check again the hearing.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll shout and keep you awake. All right. And yeah, I also did my PhD on World Heritage and have served as a WCPA member for some time on nominations and evaluations. So, just click again. So back in 2000, when Compact started, I was working in UNESCO at the time, but the thinking was when the UN Foundation took an interest in World Heritage was to examine this relationship of communities with the sites. And I think the feeling was at the time that in many situations the designation was better known internationally than for the local people living close to the sites. And I think that in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of renewed interest in this particular question, and Gonzalo Oviedo will speak to that, and Nigel Krochel and others who are in the room will have sessions this week which will address this. But this was actually now almost 12 years ago when this set of questions was posed in terms of whether community engagement with globally significant protected areas could be an effective strategy for conservation. And UN Foundation put in a lot of money at the time to support World Heritage, and there were other initiatives and on management effectiveness that Mark Hawkins and others were working on. To some extent, this was more on governance. We didn't call it governance at the time. And we were very fortunate to get a second phase of the program. So it started as a 5-year initiative. We were able to get a second phase from UNF, which had taken us through basically to this year, 2012. It was a 15-year vision to look at the capacity building of communities really over a medium-term period, because 3 or 4 years is really often not enough to show results and impact. And that's what Jessica has been working with us on for the last couple of years, is to really review those lessons, and we'll quickly run through them today, but we'll have another session, as she mentioned, on the 11th. We've worked with the UNESCO World Heritage Center as closely as we can. We signed an MOU back in 2004 on it, and we've tried to keep the discussion alive with UNESCO and the CBD Secretariat, and more recently with the IUCN Global Program of Protected Areas and Tim today. So thanks to Ted Turner, we should recognize UNF leadership and guidance for the extra support that they've provided in essentially leveraging GEF funding. So the SGP is the delivery modality for the funding. I won't say a lot about SGP. It's a global program now operational in 125 countries. We provide small grants up to $50,000 to national NGOs, CBOs, indigenous peoples. I think the current number is in the region of about 15,000 projects globally. So there you see the distribution. It's not quite as universal as World Heritage, but then the eligible countries are all, they're not all the countries in the world. Just last week there was a mission to Russia, so the map will go further orange. We do need to focus geographically within some countries. We can't work everywhere. So World Heritage was one of the ways we were looking at increasing impact by zooming in on sites to get maximum benefit for GEF investment for globally significant sites, and strategically focusing small grants rather than clustering, rather than sort of scattering them all over the place in a country. Just to say, this is the kind of baseline situation in SGP. We have roughly 50% of the projects are biodiversity, many of them on sustainable livelihoods and agrobiodiversity. We'll have a session tomorrow on that portfolio on the Agriculture Day. So what exactly is Compact? Well, it was designed kind of on a theoretical basis of a set of tools, a methodology. I'll quickly go through those. With initially 6 sites, we added a couple of additional sites in the second phase. They were chosen for their diversity. So we had iconic mountain landscapes, Mount Kenya, Mount Kilimanjaro, marine sites like the Belize Barrier Reef that we heard about earlier and we'll be hearing about more, islands in Dominica and the Caribbean, mixed sort of coastal sites, Puerto Princesa in the Philippines, and sites with mixed designations, also with biosphere reserve status, often with indigenous peoples present and living within them. In the second phase, we added a slightly different set of dynamics with a transboundary site between Senegal, Mauritania, and a tentative list site in southwest Madagascar. And here are the steps that were outlined. The thinking at the time was to take on this debate about integrated conservation development programs, ICDPs, some of the skepticism about whether these worked for conservation. We heard this morning, for some of you that were in the Category 5 discussion, about some of the research on that. This is, in a sense, a 12-year experiment. There were some structured ways of working across the countries. The baseline assessment was meant to look at the socioeconomic, the conservation status in the different countries, to revisit it later on. Then the idea of the conceptual model was to look at the niche where community interventions were relevant in the site. So having listened to Guy and to Tim about all of the threats of mining and uranium and things, these were not the problems that Compact was taking on. This was, in a sense, the comparative advantage of the Jeff Small Grants Program in comparison with other actors. And that conceptual model was meant to feed into a site strategy which would be reviewed and revised. So that's an example of a spider diagram, which we come up with often, and then maybe are they being used in management plans, who knows. But the thinking here was to basically look at where the niche was for the community interventions, threat ranking for different threats, and to look at where community projects would make sense. So I just put a picture there of a biogas project, one of many in SGP in and around Mount Kenya, to reduce pressure on the biomass of the forest, as an example of the way of threat reduction. And so, but what actually happened in practice, here was a theoretical idea. We took it to 6 sites, and I think it's fair to say that really it evolved differently in every site. There's no one single way in which Compact kind of evolved and happened. As the category system of IUCN varies and the reality on the ground varies, so did Compact. But in a sense, the core of the program was a clustering process of small community initiatives in and around the landscape of a World Heritage Site, which were then networked and aggregated, and experiences were sort of fed back in over the medium term. And there you see, at one point in time, a spread of projects around the Siancan World Heritage Site Biosphere Reserve in Mexico. And I just put that slide up. We have a brochure, a few hard copies of it about Compact, which gives us some background about the program, which you can ask me or Jessica for at the end. But the SGP motto is learning by doing. We actually, the idea is to take risks with small grants and then learn as you go along. Instead of putting in all of your finance into a much bigger project and then see it fail, you can take risks with smaller projects and innovate with a certain threshold and tolerance for failure. I have 2 more slides. The question of the kind of scientific modeling and evaluation, we've been able to incorporate, as we've gone along, new technologies using a software called Miradi, which means project in Swahili, to assist in the assessment of whether these results chains and assumptions about community-based projects are actually working. And that took us back to the very beginning in 2000, when some of you probably know Nick Salafsky's book, Measures of Success. He's been working on this conceptual modeling software, which allows you to track in real time some of your indicators and assumptions. But it wasn't all scientific. I think cultural approaches turned out to be almost more important. This is my last slide. This was an additional partnership we added, recognizing that World Heritage Sites offer a lot of economic potential and opportunities, especially for tourism, and that basically they kind of aggregate. I mean, the state parties nominate them, let's be frank, because there is a sort of economic dimension to it for income, but how much of that actually benefits the local communities? A lot of that is siphoned off by hotel international chains, etc., etc. So this was a program we put together, quite a complex one, for blending grant and loan finance with Conservation International, which is still under implementation. The idea was to work with small and medium enterprises, like indigenous tour companies, that sort of thing. We're learning some lessons as to how hard that is. But this was a kind of an evolution of the Compact program. I will stop there and pass over to Nelly to present more detail about what happened in Belize. Thank you.
Thank you, Terence. And I'd just like to say thanks very much for the opportunity to share a little bit today Belize's experience. I'd like to start off today by sharing, so you have a visual of what I'm speaking about, and I guess this is ideal that we sort of have a composite presentation, because as some of you may know, Belize is a composite site. So it is constituted of 7 different protected areas within the country. The map on your right really is a reflection of just one of the challenges that we are facing within our World Heritage Site, which is the impact of fishing within the coastal area. And as you can see, this map really shows the impact of just one community that fishes the entire coast of the country. Compact in Belize, in particular, seeks to preserve the integrity and character of Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System by developing and supporting a range of conservation and sustainable livelihood activities through transparent and democratic partnerships with coastal communities and other stakeholders. And in particular, what it focuses on, or the different activities that it focuses on, is really alternative livelihoods, sustainable fishing practices, tourism services, development of co-management, as Belize does have a very unique structure in that it co-manages most of its marine reserves, in particular terrestrial, but also significantly for the marine protected areas. Public awareness and education programs within the coastal communities, and empowerment and advocacy. And this is just some images of the kind of work and the activities that Compact is engaging in at the moment. Speaking particularly about the partnership in Belize with NGOs, CBOs, and other World Heritage institutions or agencies partnering, Compact's partnership really has allowed protected areas managers in Belize to increase their institutional capacities to manage these sites. It has supported community-based initiatives directly linked to protected areas.